it's a final conversation on this very, very challenging conference, another art world exploring conditions of equity in contemporary world, which are obsessed, the world with spectacularization, financial success, festivalization, power, and so on. So questions of equity are not really on the high agenda of policymakers. So under the Teemu Mäki recommendation, this title of this session is named, "What does art give to and what can it demand from the society?" It's a huge title, but we would like to explore this here from the standpoint of different arts associations that are more and more active in contemporary world, taking in their hands issues of self-organization, activism, even theoretical questioning, and so on. So I would like briefly to present our this evening participants. With us is Teemu Mäki, a representative here from the Artist Association of Finland. Ivana Vaseva, curator, Faculty of Things That Can't Be Learned from North Macedonia, but also coming from an initiative, Culture is a front page of every society. And she will contribute here also discussing some of the results of symposium they've been organizing, Precarious in Capitalist Culture. Should we continue living like this? Vasilena Gankovska comes from Austrian Association of Visual Artists in Austria. Zoran Pantelić, artist, which used to be in many different artistic collectives, absolutely, Kuda.org, etc. Now, today represents Association of Fine Artists of Vojvodina in Serbia, and he will speak about broader aspects of art association in a present social context. And finally, Vahida Ramujkić, also visual artist, activist, known for her transdisciplinary projects linking culture of memory, activism, and so on. And today she represents the Association of Fine Artists of Serbia, association that is in this very moment in the process of reform, of improving its internal organization, but also fighting for improvement of cultural policies regarding especially independent artists, or our government would say freelance artists, but I think that this is much better to use the term independent artists, but we are going to see. Now, because we don't have for such a topic much time, I would like to ask Teemu Mäki, who was suggesting this topic, to give us the preliminary, thinking, reflections on what does art give to and what can it demand from society.
Thank you. Let's see if I can do it fairly quickly, because after all it's a discussion and not my presentation. I made some notes for myself, and don't worry, I really didn't make them for this occasion. I just picked some slides from some lectures that I've been giving, and to use them as memory notes for myself. And I will share this PDF with everybody during this session. And the notes that I made were, I think there's about 7 of them. And I try to cover some viewpoints about this topic. One is this. I've written a few books on this topic. What's the role of art in society and in the life of an individual, starting from my doctoral dissertation. And it boils down to these four purposes that I propose, that in spite of our differences of opinion and ideologies, we tend to have a consensus that it's something like this, that it's art gives pleasure, and to some people it's escapist pleasure, and to some others it's the pleasure of really facing reality in the most holistic or impassioned or truthful way. And then there's the common idea that art is important as a discussion starter, that there are important topics and art can ignite important political or societal discussion. And then there's the idea that art itself is a special form of correspondence or discussion. And the fairly new idea of art that's participatory and really in a very physical way, a special kind of discussion. Then there's the tradition of thinking that sometimes art can be really a source of wisdom. And I tend to divide it into these two subcategories, that there's the art that functions pretty much like politics or science, that it tries to solve or propose solutions to concrete problems, like what to do with the climate crisis or how to deal with refugees or things like this. And then there's the more philosophical aspect when art tries to deal with so-called impossible questions, like how to deal with our mortality or what is a good life. And then there's the fourth purpose, the cultivation of emotional life, which also has a long tradition in our discourse. The idea that through art we might be able to become more aware of what we feel and why we feel, and then control or direct our feelings better. And then there's also the idea that to expand our emotional life is an end in itself, that we don't have to do it to be in control, but just to feel more varieties and more intensities. And then there's the tradition of thinking that through art we actually train or rehearse our positive emotional potentials, like our tendency for compassion. So this is from, let's say, art philosophical viewpoint, or from the viewpoint of an artist. And then, from an organizational level, mainly from the viewpoint of the Artists Association of Finland, which represents practically all visual artists in Finland, about 3,000. But also there's another organization, I'm not the chairperson of that, but I'm a board member, this Forum Artis, which is like an umbrella organization of all artists' organizations of all fields, like from literature to dance and film and visual arts and so on and so forth. And in our rhetoric, we currently tend to use these four notions for obvious reasons. The very popular and fairly instrumentalist idea that art is important because it has been proven that it improves our health and well-being. And then number two, these are not in an order of importance, it's just a list. Number two, the idea that art is a special form of critical thinking and discussion. This is the one that's most important for me personally as an artist, but from an organizational level, it's just one of the points. And then another instrumentalist aspect is this number three, the idea that art increases equality and social cohesion and improves our democratic society. And then fourth is the more right-wing and market-driven view, where we claim that art is really important sector of economy, especially in future, because it creates a lot of jobs and it's fairly green usually, and it grows faster than other sectors of economy. And I presume you are all totally familiar with these aspects, but still it might be good to bring these up as a points of comparison. Then there's a more state-oriented or state-derived historical view. This is the summary that I've used in some lectures when I've tried to explain either politicians or art students, where does this tradition come from that the nation states especially tend to have public funding for arts or special place for arts, like more freedom of speech to arts than other sectors of society. And in the case of Finland, these are more or less in chronological order, that when Finland was created, the idea of Finland as a country and as a nation, art was really important tool in that. It created the idea and fantasy of Finland and Finnish people. So that's the first traditional notion. And then somewhat later, let's say 100 years ago, a very popular idea was that art refines the brutish, ignorant masses and makes people more sophisticated and takes them from just primitive urges and alcoholism and elevates them into sophisticated and more complete humans. That became a very popular idea. And after that came the idea that, okay, especially in industrialized country, we acknowledge that work is stultifying, that we need some recreation, or the workers especially need some something with which they can charge their batteries and be active workers the next day again. That became important reason for giving special attention and funding for the arts. And then came number 4, which I've circled here because it's my pet. Then after the world wars, especially popular became this idea that our civilization has failed, and now really drastic critical thinking is needed, and maybe arts can offer insights that other sectors of society can't. And this was a 50s, 60s, 70s boom in a way. And then came the yuppie years and turned to more right-wing viewpoints, and the idea that, okay, the arts actually are an industry, not just the film industry, but all the arts potentially can have a huge positive financial income on the future of nation. And now we have this latest, number 60, the health and well-being view. And in my perspective, this number 6, the claim that art contributes to health and well-being, this in a way is an attempt to bring back the first 4, to offer something else, not just the number 5, this market-driven notion. And since most states and most people and most parties are unwilling to adopt those earlier reasons for funding art or giving it a special position, we've created this notion that sounds non-political, this health and well-being, but it's actually a way of sneaking back to those older. And my claim is that all 6 are still valid and they are all still used. And I also claim that we as artists or organizations, we can still use these. Of course, we have to change them or modify them. For example, number 1 originally was hugely patriotic and nationalistic, and for us might sound horrible, but we have to just revitalize it and claim that, okay, we don't need patriotic art, we need art that reconsiders what it means to be, for example, a Finnish citizen in a multicultural and global context. Okay, then this is the slide that I made when I was dealing with city and state officials that didn't have any real connection to arts. And I tried to reason out loud, why is there this tradition that arts have public funding? And it boiled down to these 5. There's the simple idea that, okay, with public funding, maybe the quality of art improves. And then there's the idea that through public funding, the diversity increases. That the acknowledgement that if we leave the arts at the mercy of the markets, then the selection actually will be very narrow. And if we want to feed the whole population, we should have a really diverse selection of arts. And that's one reason. And then there's the idea of arts as a basic human right, that only through public funding we can guarantee that there's a sufficient selection of arts, professionally made art or art as a hobby or art as entertainment or whatever, available to all citizens. And then the fairly socialist notion that without public funding, then it will be the dictatorship of the rich. The rich will decide what kind of art is good and deserves funding and spotlight. And then number 5 comes back to this idea of art as a special form of critical thinking and discussion. Then I come to the demands that we might be able to make. And these demands only make sense if we agree on all the previous points, or not all, but some of them. It only makes sense to demand something from society after we have described what art is and what are the benefits and purposes of it in a societal context. And I quickly made this list of 9. And first 4 are on this slide. Fairly obvious ones, that if art is such a magnificent and marvelous thing as I described in the previous slides, then it makes sense to demand respect for the benefits that we can provide. And then number 2, the freedom of expression. It's something that we in the Nordic countries especially take totally for granted. But on the other hand, many of us in Nordic countries also understand that it's dangerous to take the freedom of expression for granted, because it can vanish. It's not automatically permanent after it has been achieved. And an important notion to me is the idea that the mere permission to express yourself doesn't really lead to freedom of expression. It actually has 3 components: that you need the permission, and then you need the ability and resources, which can mean funding and education. And then you need to be heard, otherwise your freedom of expression is fairly meaningless. Then I propose that we can demand the acknowledgement of art as a basic human right. And then that changes the context quite a lot, because then it's not just one sector of the economy. It's more comparable to public health care or education or fair judicial system, or in some contexts to scientific research. And number 4 is that on the previous grounds, we can demand public funding. And public funding only works well if it's based on peer review. Without that, we end up in kind of lottery or casino, where sometimes a rich oligarch or current government decides who gets funded. But if we build a system where the public funding, the decisions are based on peer review, then it can work fine. And this is the second slide of these demands. Oh, replicated one. Number 6 is important currently in the Finnish context, especially because we've now been really hard lobbying for the fair compensation for the consumption of art. In many art forms, the main economic failure is that even when the artist achieves huge popularity, lots of readers or big audience in exhibitions or whatever, that doesn't automatically transform into any kind of income. So we try to change that. Then because of my background in the academia as a professor, I have high hopes for arts in the academia, and especially in artistic research. And artistically, I think the clear goal should be that we should transform the university system so that universities could ideally be the best places for making art. Like very often they are best places for scientific work. And we all know that currently arts in universities are usually only in the role that, okay, it's for educating the artists or making research on art. The artistic research has some changed this somewhat, but only a little so far. But I have high hopes for it. And then there's the purely right-wing or market-driven idea that we could just demand a bigger slice of the business subsidies cake. And then the last one is the idea that when we talk about cultural funding or art funding, in many contexts and in many countries, actually the welfare, the lack of it or the existence of it is the most crucial form of art funding too. I have some illustrations of this.
Teemu, I'm sorry, but your time have expired. It's 20 minutes, so we don't have that time. So thank you very much. And
yeah, I'll share this and then I'll shut up.
Yeah, you might keep it for later on in a discussion, and then you can find some good moment to show something else. It was not really the view of global north, it was the view of the welfare states of the global north. Finland is the state that promised no homeless people and so on. So the realities of the north and our southeastern European realities are pretty different. So I would now like to ask Ivana Vaseva to come up with her expose, coming from the organization called Culture is a Front Page of Every Society. She definitely has something to tell us how she sees the role of culture in society.
Thank you, Milena, and it's a pleasure to be part of this conference. Actually, I was kind of being really neat on getting my presentation straight to really a few minutes. I didn't prepare something long as Teemu Mäki, but it's really nice to hear actually this introduction. So I basically wrote several notes answering to the questions like what art gives society and what art demands from society. So the first question, what art gives society, for me was basically it was narrowing my thoughts to basically the useful value of art, which is really kind of tricky in today's context in today's world. So can we talk about what's the use of art? Well, is art useful for something in the society or not? And this is basically usually understood as a negative context. I try to basically answer to this question in something that I really believe, and that is the critical form of art, and that art basically, and that's today's function, that art opens new relations and new forms of thinking, and that's the best kind of usage that art can do. And this is not all art. This is basically the art that has this kind of mission and that has this critical and political potential in itself. But when we talk about the art demanding from society, and this is something that I thought that we should talk about the cultural policies basically, and what the art initiative, culture as a front page of every society, did in the past years. This is basically a long story that started several years ago, and I'm not going to go through every details and what we did in the past years. The outcomes actually, and what we faced with our endeavors in this sphere was basically the symposium, because at the end we got stuck and we faced the wall, because the Macedonian society changed, maybe you all know, changed in the past 3 years. Before it was like a really closed regime that we couldn't even get at all communication with the Ministry of Culture. But in the past years, things opened up, and we kind of used this space to make change in the way how culture and art functions. So our organization, Faculty of Things That Can Be Learned, started this, and started basically introducing the term cultural worker, because it doesn't exist in Macedonian context, through the initiative to change the regulation of the status of the freelance artist. So in Macedonia, only artists have this kind of benefits as social benefits for health insurance and pension fund. Not to the cultural workers, for example, curators, theoreticians, managers in culture, and things like that. They're not recognized as a profession in the country. So we started doing this in 2016. Then we made this initiative in the ministry. They basically ignored our endeavors, and then several years ago we founded the initiative Culture as a Front Page of Every Society, where we opened up basically the conversation for for more people to join in. But I have to say that although we made a lot of meetings with the ministry, with a lot of people, and just a footnote to this is that in the past 2 years, 3 ministers of culture changed. So whenever we made the progress, new minister came, and basically the initiative stopped. So to cut the story short, although we kind of made changes to the new law of culture, and we worked in a working group in the frames of a ministry for the new law of culture that kind of really is more makes a space for equal space for every actor in the cultural sphere. This new law is still not put in power. Although it was promised last year, things basically got stuck somehow, and to all our answers, to all our questions, we don't receive answers. So the symposium, as I mentioned, was basically a way to open up to see what other people did, so maybe that we can learn something. Although we tried a lot of tactics, a lot of mechanisms, how to change this, and we wanted to see from other people what they're going to say, what they're going to propose. And the sum up of the symposium was that we all have to be solidary with each other in order to change something. I'm afraid that that's not a strong side in the Macedonian context, and although the Union of Employed Culture Workers is still strong, and they got their collective agreement in the Ministry of Culture, then although they're supporting us as freelancers and as a non-institutional scene, we didn't get bigger support from them. So in this moment, I'm sorry to say that basically we are at at basically the moment when we started. Maybe the broader public, the broader context knows of us. We are not at so marginalized, and we're not so at the margins, but still, as far as our labor rights is concerned, we are in the same situation.
Thank you, Ivana, very much. This was a view from what I call semi-periphery of Europe. We are not the real periphery. We are very much involved in European processes, but however, living in societies where even the basic dialogue in between association of artists and, for example, ministerial and other governing structure is very difficult to obtain. It shows how different the situation is. Although tomorrow it seems that in Skopje is a great conference in between policymakers and artists. So maybe things are starting to develop further. Thank you very much. Now I would invite someone that coming from heart of Europe, Austria, Vasilena Gankovska, to tell us her view from the position of one of Central European Art Association.
Yes, thank you very much for the invitation. Indeed, actually, I'm originally from the semi-periphery because I'm from Bulgaria, but I moved to Austria 20 years ago due to my art studies, and afterwards I stayed also because Austria provides not so bad conditions in terms of developing an artistic career. Still, it is very difficult, and there are many things we wished for, and actually, during my studies, I was very active in the student union of the Academy of Fine Arts, and there I learned how to fight for rights and for how to pose demands, how to communicate with directorate. And actually, I wanted to quit this type of job, but then I got invited to become a board member of the Austrian Art Association, called in German Interessensgemeinschaft Bildende Kunst. It is important to mention the name because we are a special association, advocacy group, which works or fights for the improvement of working and living condition of visual artists in Austria. So unlikely other art associations such as the Secession, which is also an art association, or artist association, or Künstlerhaus, which is also artist association, or many other associations, we are really specialized on few topics which are very important in the everyday life of the artist, and they are social security, tax issues, money, working conditions, contracts, etc., etc. So basically, we were founded more than 6 years ago because there was a problem with the social security for freelancers, or especially for artists in Austria. So a group of interests decided to fight for their rights and to improve the situation, and after 2 years they succeeded. It was back in the mid-1950s, and afterwards they decided that there is a need for such an organization which concentrates or focuses mainly on these issues. So basically, I'm not going to talk that much about what art or what society can do for the art, or vice versa. I would just pick maybe 1 or 2 points from what Teemu was talking about. And this is a very central topic which he also mentioned, because his organization is also fighting for this, been fighting for years. And also, as we are also member of IAA Europe, we've been talking about this for a longer period of time, and this is the payment of artist work. So this is something we in our association decided to focus on around 6 or 7 years ago. So since I've been working there as a board member, this was our main topic. And what is the situation in Austria? The situation is that, of course, institutions and artists are aware that artwork or working as an artist is a work and it should be paid, but there are still institutions which pay not so much. They do not pay artist fee, maybe they pay production, but you don't get this honorary as an artist for your work. So we decided that this should change, and for that we contacted our colleagues from other artists association. I mentioned a few of them, but also Tiroler Künstlerinnenschaft and some other groups, not only based in Vienna. And we started a networking group. So we had our second meeting just 1.5 months ago, and now we are in an intense dialogue with the cultural department of the cultural division, art and culture division within the Ministry of Art, Culture, Media, and Public Administration and Sport. So just to mention a short note, Austria doesn't have a proper or cultural ministry on its own, which is also interesting because this also shows what is the status of art and culture within the Austrian politics. The last time we had an art and culture ministry together with the education was 8 years ago. And since then, art and culture are a division within either the federal chancellery or this kind of ministry with, I don't know, 5 topics. Nevertheless, we have a head of this division, a lady who is very active, and fair pay for art and cultural work is now officially part of the government program. So this is already something which is very important, that we also got very surprised by hearing that, because the previous government, which was coalition between the conservative and right-wing nationalist party, mentioned arts maybe a few times in their coalition paper, and the status of the art was, well, artists and people dealing with art are self-employed, so they should learn how to work as self-employed and optimize themselves. Art and culture should be based upon national principles, or kind of reflecting what is important in the Austrian society, which of course immediately excluded people like me, because I cannot say that I live here, but I don't know what it is to be an Austrian. So basically now we have this new kind of experimental coalition between this same conservative party with the Green Party. So fair pay is now a big issue. Fair pay is also a big issue in the city of Vienna, since Vienna has its own status as a province. So we're working on all these levels, and what is important on the one hand is that now, since the dialogue is there, things should happen very fast. So also I think that these last few months showed that also to the politicians and the decision makers that they cannot leave people dealing with art and culture, working on art and cultural sector like this. Also because it became visible that it is not only the freelance artists working on that field, but there are many, many other jobs, many people working on a contract or a part-time contract or freelance contract, or different types of employment. So of course, also it became visible that people who are freelancers, especially on the field of visual arts, do not have any guarantee for their artist fees, but also it is difficult to say how much their work cost. So this is something which is a very tricky question, and this is something we are going to work the next few months on, since there are some nice examples from other countries. But still, we also need to consider the local situation. So basically, I think that there are all these different levels that, of course, you need to look what's going on within the association. What do our members need? Because not all visual artists in Austria are our members. So if we decide to reach a broader group of people, we need to work with our partners and friends also from the other regions of Austria. And then if we continue on the state level, the next step would be what's going on a European level, because of course legislation and rules and guidelines should be also implemented according to European law, because otherwise we need to revise them. So there are many different things we have to consider and work on, but there is one major thing, that society, still Austrian society, is not quite sure if art is work, if culture or working in a cultural field is work, or you're just doing it for pleasure. So there are all these things we have to work on a parallel on. First of all, we have to take our community, also because I think I saw it in Teemu's paper that also artists themselves should start asking for a payment, or for proper payment, because this is something which many colleagues think that it's not possible because they've heard that this and that organization doesn't pay, but eventually some of them started paying, so please ask for that. And I think that the role of our association mainly is to mediate or to navigate between all these different participants on the field. And of course, what became clear to us is that our members needed us a lot the last months. Of course, we couldn't open our space to be there physically for them, but of course, we opened up our phone lines, and we also could answer their emails. But also what became clear is that this requires a lot of human resources. We thought that we could manage with 3 people working in the office. Well, of course it didn't work. So yeah, I mean, these are things which have been challenging for us the last months, but I think that in a way people acknowledge that the existence of this type of organizations is very important, because I felt a certain skepsis towards what we've been doing the last few years, just in private conversations or from people I knew, or when you go to an opening, of course, they know, oh, you're working for the organization, what's going on. But now people are really grateful and happy that someone is doing this research job, reading different guidelines and laws and text and really papers which not everybody can understand. So basically, in a way, our work is also to translate all these guidelines and requirements and things the government is publishing in regard of COVID funds or some other things. And yeah, in a way, it's a difficult thing, but I'm happy that I can do that, because in this way, I can also see that I also have this everyday life as an artist, that I feel that I do not only participate in this game, let's say, with my interest, but also that I can do something which is interesting for many other people. I will post a link to our website with the basic information so that people can see what we do and maybe to navigate through the website. Not everything is translated in English, but maybe there are some German speakers around who would.
Or we can use Google Translate.
Yes, well, I mean, this is also something which works perfectly.
Thank you very much, Vasilena. What I might add about fair pricing and asking, I was very surprised when I became director of the Belgrade Summer Festival that musicians are paid as much as they ask. With theater people, we negotiated to a little bit cut down. And basically to visual artists, they told me they don't ask money. So why we should plan in our budget, they never ask. So, however, we allocated the amount for every visual artist, and plus I allocated one of the students to help them. And I have to say, all of them spend this money not for honorarium, but for art production. So they made something bigger, more important, and so on. So I would say you would have to consult with the Association of Musicians how to ask a fair payment and do not negotiate about it. That's it. That's price, and you have to follow. I'm a little bit joking, but let's now go to Novi Sad, which is relatively very close to Vienna. And Zoran Pantelić will give us his view on one environment which is multicultural, different, and so on. Please, Zoran.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Milena. I will continue with this, and what I heard from Vasilena now is actually really interesting, because this evening I would like to join this conversation mostly from the position of Artistic Association of Artists of Vojvodina, beside of my own organization and my own artistic activity, because when I go through the program, I realize then it's really complex structure of range of collective organization, and what means then when someone really works as a collective unit for their own, and it's completely different than we be talking about the artistic association in a national or regional level, which means then such organizations are mostly heterogenic, very difficult to talk on only one goal, and it has to have a lot of time to discuss and to negotiate and to create a proper consensus. So everything what Vasilena mentioned, it's actually something what was actually improved in the basic structure of our own associations during socialism. But the last decade was actually crucially changed the whole environment. First of all, then we have a series of changing of laws, including law on culture, labor law, law of citizens association, copyright law, including a lot of following laws, which is change the whole environment in which artists are actually working. And all these questions was Vasilena now mentioned, and they are actually working. That's exactly something what we're actually trying now to reinventing as a major topic for our members. First of all, then a lot of artists actually working as a left self-category in society, trying to believe then the artists, it has to be, you know, supported by the state, and in such a circumstances with the change, the whole environment, they're literally lost. And I must say, then talking about these problems in the global context, we could actually making a never-ending list of you know, problems with talking with authorities and negotiating and all that stuff, but also we could actually have to be very strong in internal critics and to building up stronger capacity of our own association. In general role, to understand what art is, I think that this is actually pretty far on this basic question what we have to focus on agenda as a union, let's say, because all this question of the contracts and the situation, how the artist could actually survive, and the whole fields of in which kind of condition they're working and all other stuff, artists has to proclaim and to articulate very clearly facts and to face it into the decision makers. That's something which is completely putting aside through these changing laws, and I think then a lot of artists has to learn into it. And what Vasilena mentioned now, that exactly we need someone who had helping us in this transmission of a lot of acts, and then the artists trying to ignore in a way all these, you know, documents, but it's through this structure, it's basically one of the major channel to create better condition for the artist itself. And that's something that we actually trying to mention in our own association, because I had just to explain briefly. Then we have recently through this changing of the law in Serbia, we have two representative association of artists who's actually dealing with this major issue, which is one tonight representing by Vahida, and the second one which I'm representing tonight. And this is basically just to represent one part of this major top-down legacy of redistribution of some jobs for the associations. Means then our association has to redelegate some of tasks and to follow what's going on with freelance artists, documenting, creating this criteria, changing and perceiving, and this medium in between our artists in the association and the Ministry of Culture itself. So this is something which creates kind of situation. Then our association has to be a player in this game, and it means then it's also asked to having a strong capacity for our own organization to be ready to act and to really push the decision makers to change some of the circumstances what is not works well in this particular moment. And we have to also include in this circumstances what we have at the moment, then the global circumstances which happened in the last 2 decades mostly. It's a stronger aspects of commercialization and this value of market aspects of sustainability, which was pushing away hardly this question of public funding art and how it's actually distributing public art in open calls and other stuff. So all these issues start to be hot for all our two major associations. And at the moment, we're actually working a lot to synchronize, in a way, our own activity. In this particular year, when there was a strong crisis of Corona, we also worked together with the independent scene, supporting and raising the solidarity fund for all other workers in field of culture, which was not necessarily freelance artists or artists itself. I mean, all other, cultural workers, which was including in the process of working in a culture production in general, not necessarily fine arts, but it's in the bigger field. And this is something that we actually try to either to be supportive to each other, to learn from each other, and trying to create a stronger capacity for our own association to fight for the better rights. I think then I could. Milena mentioned these multicultural aspects. I would say then, talking about the northern region of Serbia, which was historically mentioned as a multicultural stronger identity, was strongly changed in last 3 decades. And I would rather say then we have a very strong process of monoculturalized of Vojvodina. But this is another topic. I mean, then still we have a major population of our own members in Artistic Association of Vojvodina. It's around 500 members, which is very much diverse of different nationality. But in general topic, I would say then talking about the economical aspects and the structure of how it's actually controlled the state. All aspects what we are talking about the culture policy at the moment, we are actually focused on very strongly centralized country, and doesn't matter really than anyone else from different town or different region has to be in a very direct communication with the center. And that moment, in these circumstances, I think then even more important for us, it's actually then to dealing with two associations of Artistic Association of Serbia and Vojvodina, to working more frequently together. So I would stop here. I think then Vahida could actually join me and to continuing. And
that's exactly how it was planned. So now it is, Vahida is the last one for the first circle presentation. And then I will open up the debate. Some questions already started to be received through Facebook, but I will after encourage all of you who are present here to participate in the discussion. Vahida, please.
Okay, thanks, Milena. I hope you can hear me. I have to say, I'm going to talk like our experience is maybe the shortest here, as our like this new management of the Association of Artists of Serbia stepped in only in this January. So, but maybe our association is the oldest here. Last year it celebrated 100 years of existence. So Zoran already said lots of things that I don't have to maybe like made a good introduction. But I will just shortly explain about the Association of Artists. So it has over 2,500 members. So in a way, it's a society in a small. There is we have to in our membership we have very different orientations, and like it's not like any artistic, poetic, or whatever. Like it's the association of all kind of artists. That it was made with this idea to represent the interest of the artists in early 20th century, and it maintained to serve this purpose after the Second World War with as Association of Artists of Serbia. And it's this let's say socialist times. It had the function of kind of artist union that as Zoran explained well, somehow with the changes, like so-called transitions in the early 90s, it lost lots of it went into kind of neglect and lost lots of its positions, gradually lost lots of almost completely or completely structural funding from the government, and we were talking about independent status of artists that was before that we are claiming and work promoting lots now, that in previous socialist times it was really professional status, which now was degraded to mere social status. So I'm talking a bit jumping from a question topic to topic, but since the beginning of this year, we came into the this big, well, let's say the Association of Artists also what we inherited is this very massive organizational structure that was enabling for a long period that any changes happen, that the organization develops and progress in a way. And also there was no really communication with like a membership, and so there was no interest and no like the sense that anything could be changed through the association. So there was like a group of artists started together at the end of last year, and we managed to organize this big assembly and to take I'm talking about around over 60 people. And also you have to understand that the managers board is a big structure. There is more than 20 people in different bodies, like I don't know, like a management board, the supervisory board, arts council, artist council, court of justice, and so on. It's a statutory commission, and so on. So we came to like, I mean, we like people who were organizing ourselves. We came to take these positions and start to introduce different like measures, like to. As we saw, there is lots of topics. We started to organize quickly working groups and to like try to like find the contacts of all the members that the contacts were lost, and like to inform people, build a new website, and started the work in working groups related to like the question of independent artists, to fair practices, to spaces, because we also have worked into exhibition spaces where we organize two manual programs. And all this, I have to say, without structural support. That is very important. We only get structure, like say, secured support from the government for taking care of the evidence of independent artists. All the rest we have to get through the open calls as any NGO, and we are talking about organization of over 2,500 members, and two big like exhibition spaces with over 12 exhibitions in a year. And so, and like what the Ministry of Culture and so like the city could give, like for example, this year, because of the corona, the open call of the city was cancelled, and the ministry also like reduced the budget for, I don't know, like we got, for example, this is just to have an idea, around 4,500 euros for each of the exhibition spaces. So like we basically work like over, like all the people, over 10 hours a day for no revenue. And and we engage lots of people who also work on a voluntary basis. And and then we started to work. We also introduced these big assemblies that would have a consultative function where we invite all the members and discuss, where different working groups would give reports on what is going on and discuss problems and so on. And also we had to deal with lots of conflicts within the membership, because also in introducing new measures is some organization they used to, like, let's say, work in a certain way, provoke different resistance, like how to say. And so, and then comes the corona and the pandemic measures and so on. Actually, I prepared some short presentation. Maybe I could just shortly share it with you, just to give some, just to illustrate it, just pictures, if it's possible.
Yes.
Okay, just a second. Can you see it? I can't see it.
Yes, we can.
Aha, okay. So is this what you see?
Yes.
Okay, so it's just pictures. So those were the meetings in December. So you can see the space and how it looks a little bit. And this was then the big General Assembly held at the end of December last year. And I mean, it's just illustrative. And then in beginning of January, when we are starting to meet in working groups and work on like a membership list. And then we entered there is also a depot and a huge archive, because our organization that was in really a bad state. And so just that you can imagine that we have lots of things to deal with. And then we like all the time our Artist Council is organizing exhibitions. And so this was then comes the pandemic, of course. And yeah, during the pandemics, already in the beginning, in mid-March, I have to explain also that as the government is not taking any measures to support art sector as all other, I mean, other sectors, we are starting to make these alliances with other associations. As Zoran said, with the Association of Fine Artists of Vojvodina and others of like Association of Art Critics and so, and also which is more important, with the Association of Independent Cultural Scene, which was actually the first occasion that let's say this official scene and independent, as we are treated in some way as representative association, as official, like, although the truth is not, it is not the truth, as we are also claiming funds for our program from through the projects from the open calls of this government and city and so. But this was the first step to make this alliance and to open this wider, how to say, like platform for dealing. So this was small intervention, because one of the exhibition spaces where we run exhibitions had to be closed during the closures. We had intensive closures during this time. And for the 1st of May, we also, I mean, first we were involved in writing different communications, public communications, or like letters to the government demanding different things and measures for the artists, and like also this aid as it was given to the other sectors. And so we made this small intervention as the exhibitions had to be closed, and put this some messages on, use the windows for communicating our demands. So this was, as soon as this closure stopped, we organized again the first general meeting, like that used to be regular. And those are just some images then in this small, in this period.
Vahida, we will have to close soon because to have time for
Okay, sorry that I'm taking time. I will unshare this. Okay, can I just conclude, or?
Yes, yes, you can.
Okay, so because with one of the projects that we started this year, which is called Towards Horizontality in Arts, we started to also look into the position, research the position of artists and art in society, and organize different debates with this topic. And also we did a survey on it's currently going on the situation in conditions of art in conditions of art, I mean of artistic work. And so I would like just to say how we have to somehow we did understood that we have to talk in two different levels, because from a beginning we were thinking that we have to advocate for artists as more as a social worker, to in terms of what is the relation of art and society, that as art contribute art as Mäki Teemu was explaining, is contributing to society as a whole. But that so the artist also should be supported hugely by the let's say not society, but a government structures, public funds, and so. But as in our situation, this is very far away, and artists have to continue living every day. We had also to think on this lower level somehow, what is more achievable at the moment, and to think how in existing socio-political, economical situation we can improve that artists are a better benefited, how to say, through wages and social security, regulate how the status is better regulated through socio-economic measures, how to say, that are more immediately achievable. So, but okay.
Thank you, Vahida. I think all of you are going to obtain one more moment, few minutes for your final thoughts. So prepare it. But now we can start discussion. There is not many, but few questions in the chat. But I would like to raise one issue that I think somehow had to be addressed more openly. And that started with Teemu, with the contribution of art to nation-state building. And I will just give one example, and I would like to know your opinion as artist. Roma Pavilion in Venice in 2007 and then in 2011 had Roma artists coming from 12 countries of Europe. And of course, opening of this pavilion was in these 3 days when all national pavilions are opened. So all 12 ministries of culture of those countries have been present in Venice to open national pavilion. Not a single one came for the opening of Roma Pavilion, where exhibited artists from Finland, Kiba Lumberg, for example, Roma artist, woman, Dusan Ristić from Serbia, and now I cannot cite all of them, from Hungary, from France, from Spain, from Britain, and of course Romania, Bulgaria, and so on. So how we can explain that? Or my question, that's the question to all of you, but the question to Teemu, I would be rather curious, do you have Sami artists in your association? And would the Sami minority be considered or would have equal rights to take part in contemporary arts of Finland? And another, which is very linked, do you have two art association of Finnish Art Association and Swedish-speaking Finns Association? I'm just curious because I visited several very separated associations, not in this field of fine arts, so I don't know. So that would be my question, because that would make a lot of controversy in responding how arts are helping nation state to be created, because then we come up to the issue of freedom of expression and everything else. Anyone would try to the first one? Inclusive of Roma artists. By the way, this one from Serbia, Dusan Ristić, now lives in San Francisco. His basic response is, if my state didn't care for me when I was exhibiting in Venice Biennial, why should I stay? What next I can expect? Nothing, no recognition. So.
Of course, the excuse for the ministers is that they are so busy that they can only visit one pavilion as the representative of their country. But to the other part of your question, in Finland, anybody can any artist can become a member of our association, even though actually the Finnish Artists Association is an umbrella organization. We have 6 unions that are our members, like Painters Union and Photographers Union and so on and so forth. But they accept professional artists, no matter what is their background or language or whatever. So we do have, for example, several successful Sami artists as members. It's different in some other art forms, like, for example, Finnish Writers Union is only for those writers who write in Finnish. And then there's separate union for those writers who write in Swedish. And there is a real problem still that there's no proper place for those writers in Finland who happen to write in some other language. Of course, their number is increasing constantly. But in visual arts or in contemporary art, there are lots of immigrant artists or artists with immigrant background who are our members. So you don't have to be citizen of Finland to become a member or anything like that. But we should improve a lot, because still we get a lot of complaints, justified complaints that our information that we share, only some of it is translated into English. And I'm a bit ashamed of that, but I'm sure we can fix that in the next couple of years.
Thank you, Teemu. Now would Vasilena try to start responding on these very economic questions, which probably are of more interest for everyone. Vahida, by the way, said that money aiming for independent cultural scene projects basically disappeared. It was given to the strongest artistic union demand. It's a union of drama artists, so it was given to those contracted theater artists which were contracted but couldn't perform in Belgrade theater. So for all this money went to this contracted artist. While, for example, another very strong association, film, succeeded not to having big cuts after COVID-19 crisis, and there we have even these 3 lines of the project financing. One of the 3 lines is for nationally important movies, and we usually see that those nationally important movies are going to fight for Oscar. Of course, they get no further in the competition, but that's our nomination. Okay, Vasilena?
Yes, so there have been some questions in the chat regarding the campaign Pay the Artist Now. I have to say Pay the Artist Now is on the one hand what Teemu posted in the chat, also the hashtag of the topic about exhibition remuneration used by the International Artists Association of Europe, but also IG Bildende Kunst used this since, like, I don't know, at least 5 years for promoting this topic in Austria. And at the beginning, till the last year, we were very focused on the exhibition fees. It is a slightly difference between exhibition remuneration and exhibition fee, but maybe it's not the time to discuss it in detail here. But it is something. It is a fee which every artist gets while participating in an exhibition or a project, no matter if they produce a new work or they exhibit an already existing work. Additionally to that, there should be an artist fee, which is for honorary of the work for the production of the new work, but it doesn't replace the production costs. So this means that production costs, travel expenses, whatsoever, they should be extra. The other thing is what Teemu also said, that in Austria the situation is like this. We as an association have members who live and work in Austria. So because of course our expertise is mainly on the field of how to deal with bureaucracy in Austria. So nationality is not a question. And the other thing is that within the funding system of the Austrian government, there is one requirement which says that you should be permanent resident of Austria for the last 3 years in order to be able to apply for funding, variety of funding. So you need to prove it with this address registration you get. In this sense, let's say people who already studied in Austria or came and stayed for 3 years have an equal start with the Austrian citizens or citizen of European Union. Although I have to say for citizen of European Union, this also applies. So if I move there, if I move to Austria now, I need to stay there for 3 years officially in order to apply for the funding. This is, of course, a positive thing, but of course, the whole problem comes from with the fact that funding is not sufficient. Funding doesn't reach everyone, and we just need more money. And it is also a question of distribution of this money. So we had another working topic about art and parenting, because this is also something very important, because mostly women who get children, female artists, disappear for a few years from the landscape of arts because they have to take care of their kids. Once they decide to come back and want to go to an art residency or so, they don't get the funding, or something's happening. So what's going on now is that the government, for example, provides additional funding for single parents if they want to go on artist in residency, if they attend one of the artist in residency programs of the Austrian government. So this is something which is already positive, because this at least let's say gets a bit of a help or support, and then you can also pursue your career. It's not easy, but at least it is something. Also, there are other things which are very important in terms of what artists can contribute to the society. The Austrian government and the people working in the art division in this government or our association, we live in parallel worlds. So basically the Austrian chancellor is all the time talking about Austrians, that the Austrians should make an effort, and Austrians should do this, Austrians should do that. And of course, people like me do not feel included. So this is something which is a big problem, and it is also a political issue, which we've been addressing all the time together with other art associations, with musicians, literature, theater, etc., and so on. This is something which we cannot change from one day to another, but it is important that we stick together and at least we try to balance and to erase the differences which are from an economical perspective, origin, whatever. Also, gender aspect is very important, the question of diversity and intersection. This is what also our association is all the time dealing with, and actually we have more questions than answers, but we are working on this, and this is very important. And also what Teemu said, yeah, we have this with this new website, and we are still working on translating parts from German into English, but it's not easy because it also costs money and time. So we are just doing it step by step. But the most important information, for example, for foreign artists or artists coming from abroad and try to settle in Austria, at least we managed to translate this in English. So this is already one thing.
Thank you, Vasilena. I think we have to give chance to others to respond. Ivana, can you respond on the issue of solidarity?
Yeah, I think the item of solidarity, as Katarina said, it's really important actually, and especially it was put in focus during this corona pandemic. And I think a lot of actually, I've only answered to many interviews about and also written text about this solidarity thing. And I hope that this time we will use this time to kind of reinvent solidarity or actually invent different approach to solidarity. But on the practical side, I can only hope that the new Minister of Culture, that was just like recently put in her position, will really address our endeavors and really try to accept what we've done in the past years, and also like really set on power this new law of culture, where the infrastructure for equality for all basically actors in the cultural field is set. The other thing that I think that maybe this whole pandemic also created, and I'm afraid basically of that, this whole pandemic created maybe more isolated island of all people being kind of addicted on Zoom. So as I can see in the recent days, that basically everybody is kind of directed on his or her own thing and not following what is going on in the rest of the cultural scene. So I think that after this, after the vaccines and after the world is back again, maybe not on the same thing, but maybe on something else, that the solidarity will mean something different to all of us, and we will kind of really hold on to it. And as I guess for our own fight, I guess we will have to. We yesterday opened an exhibition of Vlasta Delima in Skopje, and she says that we all have to kind of address our own thing to everybody individually, and we hope that some of them will really hear what are our problems and really try to solve them.
Thank you. I can't see now Zoran Pantelić. There is one question for him, but there is a question for all of you. How you see examples of collaboration in between public funds and private galleries, for example, and public galleries. She said, Anja Obradović said, there are a lot of examples, private commercial galleries sponsoring pavilions at the Venice Biennial, but also her question was, can that be very beneficial, especially to us living at the semi-peripheries, and how any of you can see that? No one would like to respond. Yeah, Vahida.
Well, so let's say from the beginning, this was not our orientation. We had lots of discussions regarding this topic in organization, for example, of these preparations of a biennial of young. There was ideas, but at the end didn't happen of collaboration with a private gallery, and it didn't happen also because there was no funds, and they were not, it doesn't matter. But also we got some offers for sponsorship, but we are very, how to say, like aware of these collaborations, like very, not suspicious, but like not very easily entering in this kind of arrangements. Also, like trying to understand what clearly is there in a game, let's say, what is
why they are doing this.
Yeah, like what like yeah, because we know this is some completely different territory where we are not like you play in like a association that we stands like represent for. And but like I also have to say, it's like we are not completely against this. So like we have to like also acknowledge that there is we are inside this big market, that everything is marketized in the some way, and that we have to deal with this. It's just that we are like a bit neglected at the moment.
Not yet ready.
To enter. Yeah, because it's we have to like have a like a more clear like structure how to position, if you understand. Okay. Like how to
thank you, Vahida. We have to go to give it now to Zoran because he has a question from Milica Lapčević. How multicultural profile of union changed in recent years in regard what Teemu explained about Finnish unions? Unmute yourself.
Sorry. Yeah, so as I said from before, we have kind of a legacy of this multicultural, you know, equal level of rights in socialism, especially then was pushed by the rights of minorities in the Vojvodinian parliament, and especially in the association. But I think when we have a lot of discussion about that, and we try to stay out of it, not to be, you know, kind of a in a crap of this, you know, structure of politically correctness. And we're trying to discuss with our members, then we actually have to support good art. And it's not easy, of course, because going through these processes, then it has to have kind of capacity of a dialogue to being, you know, improved and to express some arguments, and which is not easy, especially when you're talking with an artist, which is usually sometimes very neurotic or very egomaniac, obsessed, and then you are actually going through very risky, you know, period of, you know, neglecting some aspects of artistic values. I think then, I mean, in general, we have a big problem in this discussion of artistic value. First of all, then the whole infrastructure in the state generally was actually collapsed, and we simply need some levels of first when the artistic expression comes up, something what has to be, you know, done and transmitted in a further level, or how to actually diffuse these aspects in society. Which means then all these bridges, I mean, although we are talking about the artistic critique or galleries or the system itself, and doesn't exist, and then we don't have a proper magazine or proper channels how people communicate. So internally, we're actually trying to support our colleagues who's actually ready to discuss about the artistic ideas, not necessarily to be, you know, poisoned up as a national, you know, label.
Thank you, Zoran. Now, before giving the word to Nina Michalinac as the chair of UNESCO, chair in cultural policy and management, to close the session, I will ask all of you, do you have something like a final statement? So if you have, this is the chance.
I could say something.
Please.
First of all, then we actually making strong topic on this, public culture aspects in association, and we actually mentioned very strong hot topic for us. But I mean, in general circumstances, and to understand the global context, we should actually realize then we have this very specific moment of last 2 decades, especially, which is forced with the technological superiority, and which is completely putting out all these humanistic, science and culture itself. It has to be starting to be kind of a specific reproduction of beauty. And I think then this is strongly changed the whole paradigm of artistic, role in contemporary society. And this is something then we have to change. I mean, it's very difficult to talk about this. Then this is a proto place where innovation actually comes from the art. But then this diffusion and how to actually improve to other, social, categories, it's something then we have to work on it.
Thank you. Any other of panelists?
I can say something. First of all, I encourage everybody to make big demands, even though they might seem foolish at the moment. I graduated from the academy 30 years ago, and at that time, everybody was saying that this public funding for the arts will collapse, and now it's time to learn to survive in the hard commercial market. But it didn't happen. Almost the opposite happened, and the public funding and the position of the arts in many European countries is much better than 30 years ago. So don't give up. Say out loud what would, in your opinion, be the ideal structure of the arts and position of the arts in society.
Thank you, Teemu. Anyone else? Then I would just say it was very good. In fact, as a kind of a conclusion, we have to develop as association of artists a lot of advocacy, lobbying skills, policy making skills to defend fair culture, but also, as someone said in the chat, openness and links in between different sectors. You as association, you are part of civil society, but you have to have right to influence public sector and also private sector, and to be more free in coordinating the two. So finally, I will give a word to Nina Mihalinac, a new chair, UNESCO Chair of Cultural Policy and Management at University of Art in Belgrade.
Can you hear me? Hopefully the two of us will become together UNESCO chairs, and that we will find a new organizational model for the UNESCO chair, but that will be something new for the university. I wouldn't like to close this discussion, but more I would like to open a continuation of this discussion which was led during the conference, and to remind of the first lecture given by Irena Ristic, who was speaking about how to create a collective, and on the question of how to foster collectives to work in the cultural field when we have different political and ideological values, and when conflicts are raised. She said, just work, just go in action. No perfect models of organization exist, but our task is to try to invent them and implement them and reflect on them. So that was the idea with the conference, and hopefully we achieved this goal. Because it's 8 and 10 p.m., I don't want to use any more of everybody's time. I just want to say great thank you to all the participants of the conference. And on behalf of the UNESCO Chair and in Cultural Policy and Management and the University of Arts Belgrade, to thank to all the institutions that participated, and especially to those who helped organization of the conference, the Association of Visual Arts of Serbia, and also Bojana Matić from the Faculty of Fine Arts Belgrade, with whom we will publish the post-conference collection of papers. So everybody will be informed about the deadlines. The UNESCO chair is open for new collaborations and ideas and projects, so please feel free to invite us for future collaborations. So thank you very much all. So let's keep in touch. And bye.
Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.